Tonight we're talking about Alien Romulus. So first I wanted to ask you, and I know that we've already done this on another podcast, but I wanted to reiterate perhaps your personal history with Alien.
Yeah, yeah. It's actually, I think it gets harder to remember the first time that I actually watched it. But I was aware of Alien, and I think I had seen snippets of it edited on TV. Like, I, in particular, remember versions of Resurrection on like TNT and USA, and it was just like so weird, which is probably why it left a bad taste in my mouth that even when I watched the full thing, I'm just like, this is awful. But I had a friend who really liked Alien, and he's like, let's watch this whole thing because Prometheus was on its way. And so we watched all four of them together, and I thought, oh my gosh, how had I not actually watched these then? And since that person's no longer in my life, now it's great to find other people that also like Alien. So Tom Panarese, my co-host over at Required Reading, he and I talk about Alien a lot, and he lent me some of his comics. And from there, yeah, looking into Predator and things like that. So I guess it really starts like pre-Prometheus. And now I feel like I can't call myself a hardcore fan because I feel like those people are like Alien Theory that just like know
Yeah.
everything. But I would say I'm a big fan. I just really love it. I love the characters. I love the monsters and the beasts and the xenomorphs. And was so excited, when we found out that this new movie's coming out. We're kind of still excited, maybe tentatively for the the TV show. We don't know. But each time, and you put your heart on the line because you hope, oh, is this going to be really good? And then you could have your heart broken. But I think because of Prey, which we both loved, we had higher expectations again coming into Romulus. So yeah, I've seen them multiple times. Resurrection probably maybe twice. I avoid that one. I don't have to watch that. But other ones, like each time I watch Alien 3, which arguably does have issues, I like it a little bit more. I think I understand it a bit more, but really the first two, and then I do really like Prometheus and Covenant, and I know that like Prometheus is its whole thing. It's got its whole little like anti-Prometheans.
I guess I would agree that I am also not a hardcore fan, but we have put hundreds of hours into Aliens Fireteam
Oh my
Elite, so what does
gosh.
that make us?
Maybe that is hardcore. Hundreds, like over
Hundreds!
200. Yes. And I almost think that that has made me appreciate the lore more. Just because you're like diving into it, you're hearing these characters, which again, some of these characters are super annoying, but getting attacked by waves of xenomorphs, like what a blessing, to be in there like a colonial marine and shoot them up. I've had a lot of fun with that.
Fireteam Elite was kind of part of this relatively recent project to kind of unify a lot of the lore, a lot of that lore, and there was even a video recently about that. Because the whole thing with like the Union of Progressive Peoples that came from like the Alien 3 draft that William Gibson had written. And so there was this kind of almost like second generation fan effort to kind of like take what was there, which was, discordant because every Alien movie was directed by somebody else and all that, and just kind of put it together. And I think what's come out has been like surprisingly successful. And I think Alien Romulus is kind of a weird reflection of that as we'll get into it. What was your reaction to Romulus? Because it was kind of a left turn, I guess, at that point for the franchise.
Yeah, I will say just to talk briefly about Prometheus is that I seem to remember the trailer being like really, I don't know, obscure almost and like what's even going on. And I wouldn't, even though it's in kind of the alien timeline, it's not really an alien film. But Covenant, I got super excited because you're actually seeing the xenomorphs or forms of it. And you're like, oh, we're getting back to what that was. So with Romulus, and I've gotten to an age now where I've learned my lesson, probably maybe twice I've been burned, where I don't watch trailers after the initial teaser and first trailer because things I think just get spoiled. So I didn't really know anything going into Romulus.
Mm-hmm.
I think overall there was like some excitement because okay, there's another alien. I think it was still unclear at the time of announcing where this falls in terms like timeline wise. And then we knew who the lead was. And I don't know if we knew how many kind of teenagers, young adults were on it, but at least one who was like representative of maybe a bigger community. So I think both you and I, but I'll speak for myself, we were coming at this time of this announcement where Prey had either happened or was happening. It probably already happened. And then we also had the new Hellraiser film. And both of these had or were led by a young adult. And so Prey, amazing, like nearly 10 out of 10 for me, like definitely two thumbs up. But Hellraiser, we're a bit iffy on that. I even watched it again. I was like, oh, okay. I understood it a bit more, but still problematic. So now I'm in this like in between of, is it going to be Prey or is it going to be Hellraiser? And also with the lead actress, I had seen her we had both seen her in Civil War. And then I recently watched her in Priscilla. And I'm not saying she's a bad actress, but like her affect is like there's not a lot. It just seems like it's the same character almost. So I was concerned what this would be like in a horror film. Is she going to be capable? Is she going to be over capable? These were all the questions I think that we had, and I think we were just, or I shouldn't use we, I was just worried about like, oh gosh, is this going to be another blank? But knowing who the director was, Fede Alvarez, and knowing that it seems like people regard his films highly, I also had some higher expectations for the horror aspect of it and the body horror, like just knowing kind of his repertoire. So I had faith that it was going back to more horror rather than action.
We really liked a lot of the female leads in Alien movies past, and of course that was a tradition in the series ever since
Right.
Ellen Ripley. But we liked Elizabeth Shaw, played by Numi Rapace.
Hmm.
Really liked Catherine Watterson, and also, I mean, she didn't have much to do, but Sanaa Lathan in AVP, and then by extension Amber Midthunder in Prey. And so with this one, it was kind of like, having seen Civil War this year, going into it, it was kind of, yeah, we were worried about that. And also just, I think everybody was kind of worried about the kid characters, but
Right.
I know you had read Alien Echo, which was the backstory of Colonel Ship, which was also
Yeah,
was kind of like a young adult novel. So I feel like
it
it's not
was. Yeah.
unprecedented, right?
No, I wouldn't. No, I wouldn't think so. And I was going to say, yeah, as you were talking about AFE really cleaning up, I think the lore. I think outside of films, like the books and the comics are also trying to really do a great job too, narratively and bring things together. But yeah, I read a couple and that YA novel, yeah, I did really enjoy it. I thought it was well done.
I kind of am a bit mystified by the general or reactions that I see to this movie, not only now but also like at the time. And I think I wonder if it just is a kind of misapprehension of the greater series that it is very anthological in nature. That all the movies are kind of like their own thing, and then as you said, like the greater universe, all these comics are very standalone stories that kind of contradict each other, and there's all these talks about what's canon and what's not, which kind of misses the point a little bit, or at least makes things a little bit less interesting. And so when you have something like Alien Romulus, I feel like it's just there's not a lot of stakes as there would be for like Star Wars Episode 9. Like you got to get this right because this is going to be like the next Star Wars, and it's always going to be there, and it's going to be part of the story, and it's going to have these ripple effects. Whereas a new Alien is just like it's another exercise almost in this universe, and I think that that opens up a lot of possibilities. That being said, not only has the franchise kind of solidified over the past few years, but it's been a bit problematic in terms of what's been done with it from Prometheus onward, because you had this unprecedented thing where a director actually returned to the series, and this was the original director, Ridley Scott, and pulled back the curtain on a lot of the universe that was initially designed to be mysterious. And so we learned, like, oh, what the space jockey is, and that there's this other thing, the black goo,
Right.
with Romulus and with Alien 5, which was in development at some point, or maybe not development, but it was on the table. Yeah, we're kind of leaving that stuff behind. So, I mean, how did you feel about not getting Alien Covenant 2, or
I
Alien
know.
Awakening, I think it was called? Are you disappointed by that?
I'm only disappointed in that I really would have, I mean, we ended on a cliffhanger with Covenant.
Hmm.
And so I would have liked to seen if there were a continuation of Daniel's story or if it was just David again. Because David was, I mean, he was basically set up to be like the through line for that trilogy so to see what was actually going on and I guess setting up the colony with all those eggs there. So I was personally, but yeah, I guess you kind of have to mend your heart and move on because I feel like there was a story to tell and you know, Prometheus was a rocky start. I think people liked Covenant a bit more. And I'm like, oh man, like, can we come back and do that one and just like finish up that story? So it's just like unfinished business that I guess we'll never get to.
Yeah, even if it wasn't going to be that great, I think it does feel frustrating to just be like, well,
Yeah.
it's not complete. Like it was meant to be. I mean, he was talking about doing like 6 movies, so obviously not that many, but
Sounds like Avatar.
yeah, I think he got a little jealous. My biggest concern going into Alien Romulus, especially after having seen A Quiet Place Day One, was that they would sort of, um, I don't want to phrase this stupid because I was going to say make the alien scary again.
Mm,
I just wanted them to do right by the xenomorph and prove that
yeah.
it was like a creature. Like, what does the xenomorph do? We don't really know because it's an alien. Like, it's supposed to be mysterious. But I think that really complicates the attempt to make an alien movie if you don't know what it is. And so that's why like the prequel movies were kind of like trying to avoid the alien. And when you really get a lot of alien stuff, it's like Aliens or Alien versus Predator, and it's kind of trashy. So like, what is like a horror movie with a scary xenomorph? And as we'll see, it's debatable whether or not this movie answered that question. But we saw this movie together
Yep.
in the great state of Maryland.
Oh yeah.
Do
In
you have?
IMAX
Yes, in
at 10
IMAX.
p.m. at night.
That was.
We want to make it as scary as possible because I recently saw it again as of this recording yesterday. And I was thinking to myself as I was watching that, how many, like, I had so many questions that I wanted to like turn to you and ask, which I think I asked you like two questions. And then I thought I need to leave him alone because this is his own experience and I'll just like ask these other questions. But the other one was just like the unsettling nature of watching that birth and how many times afterwards on like the drive home, I just kept asking, like, why did he do that? Why did that thing exist? So those would be like highlights and lowlights. And I thought I was gonna have a nightmare, honestly, from The Offspring. It wasn't better the second time around, but at least I knew what was coming. And I will say that seeing it, I'm glad I saw it again because I think the first time seeing it, it's almost overwhelming because you are filled with constant anticipatory dread because you know like bad stuff is going to happen and you're just like waiting. And then you're also just like trying to suss through everything. But the second time I was able to like kind of sit back and like I knew when people were going to die and I could like really just take in the whole experience. So I liked it that first time, but was still trying to like go through and process, but I really liked it this second time. And I would put it in maybe my top three. But don't ask me what my top the other two with it are, but it's like it's up there.
Wow.
So yeah, I went in with like I was so hopeful, but I was worried to have too high expectations because I think just as fans in general, we just get our hearts broken all the time. But I was just like really almost pleasantly surprised, but so happy. I thought that, I mean, first and foremost, Kaylee Spaney, I thought did an amazing job. So like my fears, while maybe warranted, I thought that she did a great job as Rain. Andy, oh my gosh, like as a standout, just immediately, just his acting abilities, I would say that he might be the best part. Using every aspect of the xenomorph and using it well. I've never seen the face huggers used to such a degree and that there were so many. I loved that because they are like, I mean, they just usually are used as like this little scampering thing that's like scary and then they fall off, die, and that's it. But this time it's like they're an actual threat.
Right.
And then having the xenomorph and really every part of the xenomorph be a threat and have a kill, which sounds really macabre. But I just enjoyed that because you just have like the same kills over and over again. It's like everyone was used in a different way. And, this time I saw different details. And I think just lots of applause to Fede Alvarez, I think, who really paid attention to specific things. I was talking to Harry about like, I caught this stuff. And you don't realize it the first time because you don't know what's going to happen to Kay, even though when anyone says I'm pregnant in a horror film, it's not good. But the xenomorph like births itself from that egg on the wall and in front of her. So it's like going back and forth between her trying to get out the door and it coming out. And I felt like, oh wow, that works really well with what happens to her. And then that xenomorph was the one that Bjorn was like electrocuting. And I didn't realize that was the one at the end in the elevator with Rain because its dome is cracked and it's like sparking. And then I was just thinking about yesterday when I was going on my walk that the costuming is designed to, I feel like, be closer to the era of Alien and Aliens. I mean, I was kind of fixated on Bjorn's red headband. And I was like trying to figure that out. Like, what a doopy guy. But then I was also looking at Rain's like sweatshirt and it just seemed weird to me and I didn't realize it. But then this time I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like an 80s off the shoulder cut off sweatshirt. So I feel like maybe he was trying to have that sort of 80s feel. So just like details like that. And I think Carrie and I talked a lot about there were just things I'd be like, I really liked that this happened and this happened. Like for instance, Rain making good decisions about the pathogen and be like, I don't trust this, don't do it, which was great, but it didn't work out in the end. And then at the climactic fight that she such a like a nuanced thing, but she actually has to read the directions
Right.
to figure out how to dump that. And I'm like, absolutely, like no one would actually do that in the movie. Like you would just the person would just do it. But that's like that makes her character, I think, authentic in that situation because that was not her job. She would not know how to do that. So the fact that she reads those directions quickly and knows what she has to do with the levers rather than just jumping in and flipping the levers, that's just something I really appreciated. So yeah, I really liked it for the character moments. Obviously, there's a character we despise. Oh, Bjorn. I guess you always have to have a jerk, don't you? But also the alien. And I feel like this is, I mean, as cliche as it sounds, this could be the alien of our generation because it might be the thing to like really jumpstart the series. And you said it's the highest grossing horror film right now of 2024. So I think get people interested in what this is and be a good jumping on point for people, like kind of new reader friendly, but also have these like amazing little ties to previous stuff like Prometheus. And I think having young adults I was nervous about that, but I think that's great because it's like they have no idea what's going on. And that's great for people who have no idea what's
Right.
going on that's come to see this. And I thought that was a different perspective and I enjoyed like freaking out for them like don't touch that. So overall, yeah, I really liked it.
One of the things that really shocked both of us was that it's actually like a legitimately scary movie, which
Yes.
um, I feel like I was really afraid of Alien when I was a kid and I didn't know what it was. I would see like ads for it on like when AMC would do its
Oh,
Halloween
right. Yeah.
stuff, and I'd be like, "Ooh, what's that?" But I don't think I've ever really been scared by an Alien movie. They're not really. It's just not. I mean, it's too cool. I guess. Like I just like the way the xenomorph looks, and I like monsters. Going in, one of the things that was a pretty safe bet was that the director Fede Alvarez was going to make this like pretty intense, but I assumed that meant gory. So I thought that this was going to be like a splatterfest, like Evil Dead, and that turned out to not really be the case. Like there are definitely some splatter. I think it's probably on the level of like a Resurrection or an AVPR. It was a lot more tense. I mean, you had that scene where they're trying to walk through the facehugger room, which was like really cool
Yeah.
and creative and suspenseful. And I think really it just came down to like sitting down and just thinking about like what would be a good set piece in this sandbox ultimately. And looking at it from that perspective, it really comes off as like almost like the first like second generation Alien movie where you have all this established stuff and that was additive and constructive and experimental, and now it's just like, okay, let's do sort of like a Force Awakens and just like take what worked and kind of play it safe a little bit, which was another kind of surprise. When you do that, and when you're not so concerned about like pushing the envelope, I think you just kind of nail down those basics, which are, being a really scary space movie. And ultimately that leads up to the grand finale, which was like the introduction of a creature like the newborn, which was not cool looking, actually. It was really weird and creepy.
And someone online, when I posted, said that that ending was like a copy and paste of Resurrection. And I thought that that was a bit like disingenuous and almost simplifying it because I felt like there was a lot more going on. First of all, it comes out like an egg.
Right.
And I was thinking about this time that in general, I mean, I don't know who your audience is, but when a woman gives birth, they have to like their opening gets a bit bigger, okay? Because it's not just, and Kay had no time for that to happen. So I was just thinking that thing ripped her to shreds. So no wonder she's just like in a bad state. I mean, it's like Elizabeth Shaw times 10.
Yeah, that was already too
So it
much.
comes out in an egg, and I know, and then it like drops through immediately because of the acid, and then it looks like a baby, and it's like precious for one moment, which of course Rain has like that hesitancy when she sees it's a baby, and then yeah, it's part engineer, part xenomorph, um it's got I really just want to ask Fede Alvarez why there's an X on its crotch. That's like my biggest question. And it has a little mouth, but the little mouth is not cute because I do find the xenomorph little mouth cute. It's like it almost looks like a flower,
Hmm.
and I'm pretty sure it suckled Kay to death. So it's just it was so disturbing. What do you think if that did not exist at the end?
I mean, I think certainly alien tradition have like a stinger almost, like, oh, the alien's on board. I think they do that in like every movie except for the third one. But it's funny because the movie starts to climax when they're escaping the Romulus, I think it is. And they do something that is like really over the top, where they have a villain in this movie, which is like kind of unprecedented, in Rook, played by Ian Holmes, Ghost. And he's like about to hit the asteroid. He goes, no, and then he explodes, and I'm like, wow, that's like really Hollywood. A misdirection heading into something that was going to be quite disturbing. But I
Yeah.
think I don't know, as kind of like weird and I don't know, just weird as that creature is, I am thankful that that sequence exists because I think it gives the movie like an edge or something, instead of just being like a straight but very effective again exercise of the sandbox. You have something that was new, and I do think that the comparison to Resurrection as a reductive is a bit disingenuous because it's like, well, it's alien. Like, how many scenarios are you going to do? Like, I would
Yeah.
argue that it was similar to the 5-year-old monster. Like, at some point you're going to have a monster that is birthed and then is a mutant.
It's almost like, yeah, there does have to be this final battle for our lead female, but she was so badass in some of those moments. I
Right.
mean, the acid, blood, zero gravity is an amazing scene and just like cinema to graphical. I don't know if that's a right adjectival form, but like beautiful as well. And so you're like, oh, is she gonna make all these times you're like, she's not gonna make it. She's in the middle of the elevator, she falls, she gets caught by a kindly xenomorph, and then that's gone. But wait, no, there's a face hugger. It's like, oh my gosh, how much more can she take? And then you think like all is well, and she's putting her little friend to sleep, and then it's just like, oh no, what has happened?
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, the up and down for her. And I was also, I didn't even think about it. I maybe when we first watched, I would have recognized it, but that film takes place in the matter of like 50 minutes
Right.
because the space station is like its orbit is degrading into that. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, all of that stuff happens and it feels like weeks almost. But it was inevitable because that goo was there, that you knew something was going to take place, and you had such high hopes because Rain was like, let's not do it. But then someone had to do it, and you knew that those actions did not come without consequences. And I think it ties really well with Rook because that was probably in a sick way what Rook would have wanted anyways for some sort of life form to be brought down to the colony. So yes, I am glad that it's there, however disturbing it is, but I think it shows the intelligence of our lead, which I appreciate.
It didn't take long for me in looking at like reviews and reactions of Romulus to kind of keep hearing the same things over and over again. When I was thinking briefly about like, oh, if I wrote a review about this, the title would be Greatest Hits, and like I saw that phrase everywhere. Like everybody was saying that this is the greatest hits of the Alien series. But I think I was definitely the most surprised by those prequel elements, the black goo, the engineer-looking creature, and honestly, like I really think that what Romulus does for that stuff is like really smart.
And you talked about before that, it tried to be its own thing. And I like that. I think that he has developed something that can stand alone. You can watch this and be fine, not watch anything else. But I also love for us, for the fans that are longtime fans, that there are connections and that those two films that, some people can take or leave are still worthwhile. And so I did appreciate that Prometheus was brought in there. And honestly, with the birthing scene, I felt more of a Elizabeth Shaw connection than the Resurrections, but that might just because I really like Elizabeth Shaw. But that whole well, I don't know why people got to keep going back to that. It's like the worst thing a woman has to go through. But yes, so overall, I liked that.
Yeah, I would dare say that like the prequel elements were some of my favorite, which is like very surprising to me. I mean, I personally didn't have a super strong, well, super positive reaction to Prometheus, but I think that the issues, the sort of canon issues that it introduced are maybe not solved, but I don't know, in maybe like a broader sense they're solved by Romulus. One of the issues that people have is that having goo that messes with your DNA and creates aliens obviates the need for like the biological life cycle, that the whole point of Alien is that you have the space hugger, then the chest burster,
Right.
then the xenomorph. So if you have like a thing that goes in your ear and then something comes out of your back, like what's the, like why is this the perfect organism if it's actually less efficient? And to that I don't really have an answer. I feel like it's kind of like this weird midichlorian situation where it's like this roundabout explanation for like the same thing that like all movies that our franchises like eventually become. But I think that the black goo answers a different question, which is, in the first Alien, Ripley says offhand like, oh, maybe they want it for the weapons division. And then in Aliens, they kind of make that literal with Carter Burke, which was maybe a little bit questionable, because like it's kind of like, why would you want an alien for like for the military? Like that doesn't make any sense. And so in this movie, they posit that what Weyland-Yutani wants the specimen for is to extract the black goo for whatever, medical reasons.
Yeah.
And like that makes a lot more sense to me, especially from the perspective of Rook the android, who was like really channeling David just as much as Ash, because he talked about how humans are imperfect and this could make them perfect. Like that's, if we don't have the end of David's arc, like that's pretty much it. Like he kind of lives on, and like this is just what happens to androids who just live for too long. They just go crazy and start thinking that people are imperfect or whatever. So I really appreciated that part of it.
Which that rat sequence is just really interesting. I guess he just neglects to in the back of his mind. Do you think he's just thinking, well, that was just a trial, so we'll just keep trying, and then the secondary phase of that rat turning into the monster won't happen?
Right. Or maybe he just thought that was a perfected human. Who
Oh my
knows?
gosh.
That reminds us of the Honecker Chronicles, when he had to deal with rats that turned into tentacle monsters.
Yep.
Good.
Spicy chicken nuggets.
Spicy chicken nuggets. I mean, do you think that they made the Xenomorph like a... I don't know. I mean, like, I have very personal feelings of the Xenomorph. One of my favorite movie monsters. Do you feel like maybe he was overshadowed by the Offspring, or do you feel like he kind of holds its own here?
Oh. Maybe overshadowed only in the disturbing nature of it, and because that's like a big, like 20 exclamation points at the end.
Mm-hmm.
But no, I don't think so. Because once he pops up, man, he is in your face, and it's really scary. Not only that one, which I wonder, that must be when I sent you that picture of the pop, what was it, like scar damage? Maybe that's him. Because I wondered, like, who has the scar damage? I don't know if he has a name like Big Chap or not. But
Right.
I don't think so. Because like I said, I think every part of its body is utilized as a killing machine. And then to have, which we had a swarm in Aliens, but the swarm come in, I don't know. It made me more nervous, I think, in this film than it maybe did for Aliens.
Yeah.
But maybe that's because there was just like one person fighting against all of them and not a bunch of colonial marines. But
Mhm.
I wouldn't think so. Do you think it was overshadowed?
Um, Maybe just a little bit, but I guess this is kind of where I'm a bit conflicted because maybe I just went into it with like impossible requirements or expectations that they would like make this creature who has been in like Fortnite and Fall Guys into something scary again. But I think for the purpose that is, I guess I was kind of thrown off by like the scene where there's like a bunch of them and they all get massacred by pinpoint aim assist.
Yeah.
I was kind of like channeling the fan reaction, like, oh, what would the fans think about this? Which is like a really, that's not a necessary thing for a movie viewer to do who isn't a self-proclaimed individual. But I was curious if that would like, if it makes it seem lesser of a threat. But I would also agree with you that like they really do, explore every part of it, and those kills, the set pieces are really designed around it in an effective way, in a way that has been kind of elusive, it seems, for like the
Mhm.
past 10 or 20 years.
Do you think that these new viewers will make fun of the poor xenomorph because of its salivary gland issues?
Maybe if they got that popcorn bucket that leaked butter all over their lap.
I am disappointed there's not going to be a novelization, to be honest,
Yeah,
because I have like a big question is just how did those kids, we'll just call them kids, get that ship
right, right.
that's just like hanging out amidst the trailers?
Hmm.
And I wish we knew like more about the relationships between Kay and Bjorn, for example, and Kay and Tyler and things like that. No, I think that people should go out and give this a shot. If you're a horror fan, give it a shot. If you're a sci-fi fan, if you're an alien fan. And yeah, I'm so pleased because this could have gone either way and it just turned out to go really well. And I guess a big thing we didn't talk about is just this central relationship between Rain and her synthetic brother, Andy, which is I guess maybe like the central heart of that, because there are like side relationships that you can kind of get on board with as well, like Rain and Tyler, but really this like dynamic up and down relationship between Andy and Rain, I thought was developed really well and hard to watch at times.
Yeah, that was another thing. Like you have all these kind of almost disparate elements or in the recipe of Alien, which is like, Alien and space and android. And they always do something different with the android, but again, like the facehugger, it's not made into like a central part of it. And so with this, like, he wasn't just like a big supporting character like Bishop. He was like, woven directly into the thematic
Right.
fabric.
She was not willing to let him go, even though he had like changed to in like a bad way,
Mm.
to an unfeeling person. And even when he was that unfeeling synthetic, because he had a different dominant drive, she still like risked everything to go down and save him. So part of it is just he is all she has left, but I think it certainly is deeper than that, and that there's a lot of love between them, which I really appreciate. I feel like all of these characters are like a bunch of misfits, but they seem to also be a found family. And Rain seems to like somehow be in there, but also be on the outskirts of that family. But with her and Andy, that's like their unit. So I think if it had ended any other way, that would have been very heartbreaking,
Yeah.
because Rain went through so much already. To have her not have her brother in whatever form he is would be very sad. I don't know, if there were a sequel to this, which I don't know if they would ever do, what that would even look like. But I felt like it was one of the strongest points was to see this relationship. And I sometimes when characters talk to themselves, in books, it's like, sure, they do it all the time, but I'm not sure about it in films. But honestly, that one moment where like is talking to herself and just says, "Andy, are you even in there? Are you in there still?" I thought was like a really powerful moment because you can see her struggle of like what do I do with this? If something happens to him, do I let him go or do I follow after him? And it was, yeah, just really hard to watch that go down.
And that does take us into my next question, which was, would you want to see a direct sequel to this one?
I would, because I think Rain turned out to be a really compelling character. And then if Andy's still there, I think that would be interesting to see what that would be. But I don't know what how
Right.
unless because I was thinking about this yesterday. It's like I don't want them to pull the whole Alien 2 to Alien 3 shenanigans where suddenly somebody's dead. There was something on the ship all along. I don't like that. I don't think anybody liked that. So it would be for the sake of the characters. Yes, I'd love it, but I just don't know. I don't know what would happen. Man, I wish like Amanda Ripley and Rain could meet. Wouldn't that be a fun little meeting of the continuities?
It's just interesting. Like, we're kind of in this weird territory now where we kind of have like the Star Wars movies as like a frame of reference where, before, I guess even before 2008, I think like a Star Wars movie was like an episode and it was very specific. And then suddenly it's like we have things like Rogue One and Solo, a Star Wars story. And it's like, well, maybe the movie format isn't like this sacred thing. It's just like another way to do it. And so with Alien, it was always like, well, every Alien movie is like self-contained. Even in the jump between Prometheus and Covenant, you have a different protagonist and set of characters and everything like that. And so to have a direct sequel would kind of like break that a little bit. But maybe it's like, well, just look at this as like a comic book that just happens to be a movie, if that makes any sense. But it's basically what's going on with the Predator series right now, where I think they're developing a direct sequel to Prey, but also another movie called Badlands, or called that for now, with Elle Fanning.
I would be afraid that basically Rain would become Ripley because
Yeah.
because Ripley obviously had no idea what this thing was, and then she came back and she was an expert, and I'm like, that's what would have to happen with Rain, is that she had no idea, and now like there's this other group and she's telling them don't do that. I like homages and connections, but maybe not fully. Like she needs to have her own identity. So I think enough's enough, and too much starts to stink. So yes, Alien Earth, which that was generous of you to call that a teaser when it was just the Earth. And then it shifted into the dome of the alien, and then the alien shot out at you. Well, first of all, and I think their tagline is on Earth, everyone can hear you scream. So
Wow.
I feel like that's too big of a setting, that too much could go wrong. It's like Jurassic Park to Jurassic World.
Yeah.
Too much. Once they brought those dinosaurs over to the mainland, that was not a good idea. But so I just don't know how you can contain. Like, are we all of a sudden going to have an apocalyptic Earth setting where like everyone gets killed by all these xenomorphs? Because I like how it's so claustrophobic. You're on a space station, you're in a ship. But on Earth, yeah, I don't know. I'm hesitant. And this has had some ups and downs creatively, right? Creatively, stop and starts. I think the writer strike. So, maybe it's resilient and can, get past all this stuff. I'm nervous. I'm just scared we won't get too much of a good thing. We had our Romulus, which was our prey, and now we might get our Hellraiser, which is our alien. Or I don't know. I don't want it to be, but I'm just like I will be optimistic, but also have like realistic expectations of this TV series.
I can't say that like Alien specifically would lend itself to a TV series the way that like Predator, like God, please make a Predator like anthology show where every episode is like a different Predator movie. Like that would be
Oh,
great.
yeah.
But Alien, like I feel like this is kind of going like the Caprica route, if you remember the ill-fated Battlestar Galactica Earth prequel. But also like I just imagine that there's going to be like a lot of episodes where there's just like not a lot happening in terms of what we usually expect from Alien, which is fine. I'm thinking specifically of things like shows on Amazon Prime, like Dead Ringers, where they take a horror movie and just kind of stretch it out. And I heard that was good. I only saw bits and pieces of it. It's Rachel Weisz, I think, instead of Jeremy Irons, which is like good. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
I've actually been kind of like generally excited about the Alien franchise over the past few years, regardless of Romulus, just because they've been really keeping it alive with the games and the books and everything. So I think we're in a good place, you know?
Yeah. Could be a good time to be an Alien fan. I will say that on the ride back, that Harry said one of the most blasphemous things I've ever heard, in which he called the little mouth a tongue. And I just couldn't, I can't remember what question he asked, but he said about, in that tongue, dot, 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 and I was like, tongue?
It's a
That's a
little
little
mouth.
mouth. Yeah,
Oh,
you better
okay.
not disrespect that, that little mouth. My gosh, a tongue cannot go through somebody's brain like it did poor
It's
Tyler
true.
when he was hung up there.
Believe me,
So,
I've tried.
well, here's a question. I know you're about to wrap up,
It's
but I
okay.
was thinking about Bjorn because I had to sit through him again. Did he need to be that way? Do you think we just needed a jerk character? Do you think he was like over the top at all? It's just like, yeah, we just happened to have a jerk on this,
Right.
and that was Bjorn. Or do you think it
Yeah.
was too much?
That's a good. I didn't think about it that way. But like, certainly there are a lot of successful horror movies where you don't have a jerk character. That really seems more of like a slasher movie kind of thing.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what they were going for. But certainly in Aliens, you had like Hudson, and like Bill Paxton thought that he like overdid it, and he was really nervous about it. But like, that's such a memorable character. I don't think Bjorn is like memorable in the same way. And ultimately, his fate was like you were supposed to be kind of sympathetic. So I wonder if they
Yeah.
had taken a different approach. Yeah, it would have been a little bit different because when Kaylee Spaney just asks like, "What's his character motivation?" and Isabella Merced is like, "His mom got killed by an android." Like it's very like blunt. Like here's
Yeah.
the script. It didn't really soften him, and I don't know if that was even the intention. So yeah, it's a little mystifying. Again, I don't know what they were doing with that character.
Yeah, so there should have been empathy, I think, for that once that moment happens. And you do see a range of emotion from him, which is good because he had insulted Andy. I think with that sparker, he's like, what would happen if
Yeah.
I did this? And then Andy grabbed him and he's like, he starts to freak out. He's like, it's just a joke, it's just a joke. But Andy actually stops him from falling through the acid hole. And then actual concern for Navarro, his girlfriend at the time, and like protective over her. And then that moment, which was a bit odd, but we've all sussed out what it is between him and Kay right before, yeah, he decides to do it. And that's like just with this guy, I can't believe he could get two girls, not just one, but two. But yeah, I kept saying to Harry, like, man, he took his death like a champ because that acid is dripping down on him and he's just groaning. I would be like
Right.
full on screaming as my fingers are being dripped to the bone.
Hmm.
So he took it like a champ. So he does have like emotional depth or like, I don't know. He is able to show more. It's just like, I don't like that character, but I don't think he's supposed to be liked. I think
Right.
he's just an unlikable character.
Which is interesting. Like it's just an interesting choice to have like a character who you're not supposed to like. I guess he does help make Andy more sympathetic by being
Yeah.
his sort of direct antagonist, but he is the source of that like weird other layer of the movie, which like people have been wondering about. Like, why does Bjorn and Isabella Merced's character have that weird moment?
Yeah.
And then Fede Alvarez actually had to confirm a theory that yes, they were
Yeah.
involved behind Navarro's back, but it's like, wait a minute, I thought they were cousins, and it's like, yeah,
Are they half cousins? Because Kay doesn't have an accent.
right, yeah,
So I don't know if that was an acting choice or maybe they're half. I mean, is a half cousin, is that better? Having a relationship with a half cousin than a full cousin? He could also be a foil to Tyler because Tyler's like kind of an all-American guy.
hmm
So I guess if you want your opposite, if you don't want, because there are a bunch of males, if you want everyone to have a distinct character, then it works out having Bjorn be the jerk. But I do miss stuff because of their accent, so I can't wait to own the film and watch it with closed captioning to figure
yeah,
out some things, yeah, that they say.
very thick accents. Yeah, very interesting cast, just generally, just in terms of the world building. Like you have the Chinese, ethnically Chinese actress playing a character named Navarro. Yeah, you have like these people who are related, but they have all sorts of different accents, and then it's like, well, why would two cousins be in a relationship? Like, what does that say about this like mining colony
Right.
that we see a lot of in the beginning, which is really cool. Like, they're just all they have. Like, this is their dating pool, and they happen to be
Yeah.
related. That's so sad.